Welcome to your next edition of this wonderful math class. Today we're going to talk about the equations in word problems. Coming up with equations when we read word problems. I know a lot of students complain that this math doesn't seem relevant to the real life. Well, these word problems make it a little more relevant. But to help us out, I've created a couple of help sheets, and I know my picture is hiding a bunch of that one. But I've already put them into the Google Drive, so you can go there and print these off. I'm not going to go into detail on them, but it'll help you recognize what parts of equations. And here's another one, which will also, again, is kind of cut off because of where I've got my picture. But you can go and look at this, and we'll be using these a lot throughout the whole school year as we translate words into math. So let's take a look at a word problem together, and I'm going to let you go ahead and try and figure out the equation for this one. Just, do your best. See which one of those makes sense. All right, so anyway, Daniel spent half of his weekly allowance on candy. To earn more money, his parents let him wash the car for $5. What is his weekly allowance if he ended up with $10 at the end? So what do you think the equation would look like? Okay, so now I want to show you how to work through this, and we'll come up with the equation, and we'll solve the problem right now. Okay, so first thing, if you remember, I wanted to point out here, setup. I've changed it a little bit. We're going to set up with a variable. All right, we're not going to use more than one variable, but we're going to use a variable and create an equation for the problem. So that's going to be our setup, and then over here we're going to solve. Okay, so that's the only change that I've made on our graphic organizer. So let's study this. Daniel spent half of his weekly allowance on candy. I want you to highlight, when you're doing this for yourself, highlight the important things. Like this, half of his weekly allowance. Okay, that's something we just learned. Okay, that we need to know. He spent half of it on candy. So to earn more money, his parents let him wash the car for $5. That's an important detail to know. And what they want to know is, what is his weekly allowance if he ended with $10? Okay, what's his total allowance? So let's think about this. He spent half. Now, I can write that as a fraction, right? I can actually write that down. Switching over to a pen here. Half of his weekly allowance. So let's call, because that is what we're trying to find out, is his weekly allowance. So I'm going to call weekly allowance, I don't know, let's just call it X. Okay, that's what we're trying to find out, is X. But if he spent half of it, okay, if he spent half of it, that's 1/2 X, right? And they said to earn more, or to have, so he could earn more money, they let him wash the car for $5. So he added $5 to his amount, right? He added $5, and he ended with, because it says, what is his weekly allowance if he ended with $10? Or he has $10 at the end. So if he only had half of his weekly allowance left, his parents let him earn 5 more, and he ended with 10, there's our equation. 1/2 X plus 5 equals 10. So now let's solve that problem. So I'm going to recopy the problem over here. 1/2 X plus 5 equals 10. And it's a very simple two-step equation. You've seen these before, guys, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on making sure you understand how to solve it, because hopefully by now you're starting to. But we subtract out our 5. We end up with 1/2 X equals 5. Okay, because we got rid of that. Now, we want to know how much is X. How much was his allowance originally? So we have 1/2 over here. The opposite of multiplying by 1/2 would be multiplying by 2, right? 2 over 1 would cancel these two guys out. So now we have 1X on this side. So we got to do the same thing, multiply by 2. So he started out with $10. All right, well, let's see. Did we do this right? Let's go down here to number 4. It says stop and check your work by working the equation in reverse. Another way of doing it would be even to just plug this into the word problem. But here we go. Daniel spent half of his weekly allowance. So we decided that his weekly allowance was 10. So it says here he spent half of his weekly allowance. So half of 10 is 5. 1/2 of 10 is 5. Okay? So that part, we got $5, all right? He spent $5 on candy. That's a lot of candy, I think. Oh, maybe not so much. When I was a kid, that was a lot of candy. Now, not so much, but okay. So to earn more money, his parents let him wash the car for $5. So if he spent 5 on candy, that was his candy money, and they gave him 5 more for washing the car. This is the car money. And if we add those together, do we get the final result? The $10? We do. All right. So now we've also kind of answered this. Does my answer make sense? Yeah, because half of 10, is 5. So half of this $10, all right, that was supposed to be a 10, not a plus sign, okay? All right, half of that $10 is 5, and that's, it just, if you can go back and put it back in here with the way it works, it all makes sense. All right, so let's do another one together. This one says 331 students went on a field trip. 6 buses were filled, and 7 students traveled in cars. How many students were in each bus? All right, let's think about our important stuff first. What's important here? Well, the total number of students that went on the field trip, right? That's all of them. How many buses? That's an important thing. 6 buses. And that 7 students went in cars. And then, what do we want to know? We want to know how many students were in each bus. Okay, so how many students in each bus? That's our unknown. That is how we decide what our variable is that we're looking for, the thing we don't know. The unknown is how many students on each bus. So, I think I'll just call it B for bus. How's that? All right, so we're trying to find out B for bus. And let's see how we can fill in all these other things. So, it says a total of 331 students went on a field trip. So that would be how many it all should add up to, right? 331 total students. 6 buses were filled. So we don't know how many were on a bus, but we know there were 6 of them. So 6 times B is how many students were on all the buses. And we know that 7 other students drove out in cars. So we know that if we add that to the 6B, that gives us the total of 331. All right, so 6B, that's 6 buses, plus 7 more students equals 331 students. So once again, I'm just going to copy this over here. 331. And I'm going to solve this. Same way I did the last one. These cancel each other out. This set 331 minus 7 is 324. And to get rid of the 6 in front of the B, I find divide by 6. Divide by 6. And that gives me B equals 54. Not 24, 54. There we go. So what I'm proposing here is that there were 54 students on a bus. So let's think about this. It says here you can check your work by working the equation in reverse. So let's try it in reverse. So if we have 331 students. Let's start at the end here. 331 students. 7 of them were in cars, and we subtract that. 331. Subtract out those 7, and that gives us 324. If I have 324 and I have 6 buses to divvy them up in, that means if I divide that by 6, does that give me my other answer? It's kind of doing it backwards. I've kind of done it in a more, I don't know, just a less, not using a variable, just another way to check it. Does my answer make sense? Well, yeah, because, buses, if I got like 10 students, You know, if it was 10 students per bus, that would not make any sense because buses are bigger than 10, right? 54 students in a bus, that makes sense. So yeah, that one works. Now, here's what I want you to start on. You're going to have this question as a homework question. So I want you to start thinking about your sister renting a stand and selling t-shirts, trying to make a profit. I want you to think about this. Choose your answer. And then when it comes time to do your homework, you're going to get to do this and see if you chose the right equation. So this is the homework problem, but you can go to your course and you will find it there. And I want you to fill out the whole thing in the homework. Okay, so I hope that helped a little bit on solving these simple two-step equations and putting them into real problems that we can apply to real life. Go back and watch this again for a little more clarity, because I know these can be very confusing at times, but you guys can do it. You are so smart. You won't have any trouble with it.